Welcome in. Check the mic. Round 4. Instant reaction here, Sam. That's what we're doing throughout the day here. Day 3 of the NFL draft. We're going to react instantly to the big news, in particular, round 4. Did I say 3? Round 4, which is wrapping up right here. Round 4. That's where we are.
Yeah, almost finished. We got one pick remaining, and we just grew so impatient that we decided, screw it, don't care. We'll wait for the 49ers to make their pick, but we're going live. We're going live now and talking about some of our favorite picks.
Did I tweet out round 3 too? Was that in my head the whole time?
Who knows?
You just retweeted it. No, round 4. I got it right. What's your favorite round in the NFL draft, Sam? Do you have a favorite round?
Is it the first? I don't know if I have a favorite. I do like round 4 a lot. Round 4, you know, the first round of a new day, I do like a lot, right? The sort of let's see who I really like is still available, who I think is great value. Like the first round is great, but it's sort of hard to go, well, that guy's amazing value at this spot because minimum he's only falling, you know, a handful of picks from where he was probably supposed to go in the first place. But when you get into day 2 and day 3, all of a sudden there are guys like Braden Swinson is still on the board heading into the 5th round. And I would not have been upset if a team drafted him at the top of the 2nd round. And I was saying he could sneak into the 1st. Like to me, that becomes immediately one of the steals of the draft if and when a team drafts him. So I love day 3, rounds 4, rounds 5 for those players, the guys that, you know, you think are worth so much more than that, and you end up snagging them late on.
As of right now, we've got one more team on the clock for round 4. It's the San Francisco 49ers up with pick 138. We're not going pick by pick or anything here, but let's go back and forth. Some picks that stood out to you, some picks that you really liked from round 4 here, Sam.
Yeah, I wasn't loving round 4 for a while. A lot of the times the picks at the top of round 4, I think are really good because, again, it's that break, it's the dust settles, and then, you know, the talent gets really picked off. Early in the round, you know, Shaduer, we obviously love as a running back prospect. Didn't love the fit of him going to the Giants necessarily. CJ West was a guy I thought that was a good pick in the first half of the first round, going to the 49ers, sort of actually repairing some of the draft picks that they've made. But then the picks that I started to really love came in the second half of the 4th round. The first one I think I would flag is David Walker going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Central Arkansas is David Walker, the guy that was getting Brandon Graham comps, this sort of low to the ground, shorter pass rusher with an amazing bull rush, amazing leverage. Some of the most ridiculous tape in the entire draft. Now, it's ridiculous in part because he's playing at Central Arkansas. And when he went to the Senior Bowl, you sort of saw the difference in the step up in competition. But he was still pretty good at the Senior Bowl. Like, I still think he'll play at the next level. And that low to the ground, you know, body type as an edge rusher is problematic for offensive tackles to deal with. They don't see those guys very regularly, and it's a problem for them when they do. So I really like that pick for the Bucs.
All right, I got a few things to discuss here, but let me start with the pick. Cam Shaduer going to the New York Giants. And I was already raving about the Giants draft coming out of last night. They needed to take a shot for a quarterback, and they did in Jackson Dart. Well worth it. Just I don't know if Jackson Dart's going to pan out or not, but that's worth the shot. Abdul Carter in the 1st, 3rd rounder. Getting Darius from Toledo, beautiful, right? So you've got some defensive linemen. You had Cam Shaduer in round 4, just one of my favorite players in the draft. So love Shaduer. It's going to get in there with your guy Tyrone Tracy, and I'm good with that, man. Just get Shaduer in the 4th and cook. I would have loved him for the Bears and some other teams that I thought he could have been a really nice piece for them. I don't love, for my own sake, for Shaduer running behind that offensive line for the Giants, but right. I think he adds a pass game weapon because Tracy can catch the ball too. I think Shaduer can catch the ball, and you've got a nice little 1-2 punch there for the Giants out of the backfield.
Yeah, it's a really fun dynamic duo in that backfield. I don't love the situation because the offensive line is still a work in progress. We don't know what the passing game is going to look like. You know, generally, I just don't love the fit for them. But in terms, like, I love both of those running backs, so I think it could be a really fun backfield.
You want to go back and forth on these, or
yeah.
What do you want? Okay, go. You're up.
It's my turn next. The next one I would bring up would be Jaylen Royals going to Kansas City. Love Jaylen Royals as a receiver. I like that landing spot as well. It's a little bit like, you know, it's the type of receiver they have quite a lot of. They're almost becoming like the Buffalo Bills, where they're assembling all these inside slot weapons that none of them necessarily play permanently on the outside, running that X receiver spot. Royals, though, is a sort of tricky eval because he did spend a lot of his time inside. He came out of a Utah State offense that was very quirky. They would often position him like right up against the sideline, like a yard, 2 yards away from the sideline, like incredibly wide split, and give him like a mandatory outside release based off the play design, right? So it's like you're already jammed right up against the sideline and you can't come inside. You've got to try and win to the outside. And that's basically setting the DB up to win because they can play to the sideline. They can jam you right off this, off the field immediately. So that, like, it's a very difficult offense, I think, to project forward from. But Royals was a guy where we showed up at the Senior Bowl and it took 1 rep for him to jump out. 1 rep of just seeing him move around. You went, oh, who's that guy? The second rep, I was sold. 1 rep was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Second rep, I'm like, oh, who's that guy? Because he's good. And I think he was one of the best receivers at the Senior Bowl. I loved his tape once you started to dive into it and see what he could do. I love that landing spot. Obviously, Andy Reid, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes. It's a crowded receiver room. There's a lot of guys ahead of him. And, as a 4th round pick, he's got some work to do to stand out in that scenario. But, great situation to go and to try and develop.
It's like we say that for every receiver, right? It's a great situation if they land in Kansas City. Like if Xavier Worthy went to, some other place, it'd be like, oh, whatever. It's Xavier Worthy. You got a speed guy. But yeah, I think Royals has, I don't think he has one specific skill that stands out other than smooth, good route runner. I think he could just be a good, solid receiver that could definitely be productive for Kansas City. They're making a lot of good picks. Really like this Chiefs draft. I want to talk about the Buffalo Bills because, look, Deion Walker's their 4th round pick, 330-pounder from Kentucky, a guy that was getting first round buzz coming into the season because he's 6'6", 330, moves really quick, right? Nimble up and down the line of scrimmage. He's got some unbelievable plays on film where you see lateral agility that you shouldn't see from players his size. They get him in round 4, pick 109, which is great value because, look, he's coming off a bad back injury. It could be chronic. But if you're talking about, an upside play in the 4th round, great spot for Deion Walker, right? You talked about David Walker. Did you want to take him day 2? Maybe not. Round 4, great. This is what happens a lot of times on round 4. Worth taking a shot here. But the totality of what the Bills have done now, as I tweeted out earlier, I don't know how much it matters, but it's intriguing to me. The Ravens did this a couple of years ago. The Bills have made 4 picks of players who have at least had their name put into first-round mocks over the last calendar year. How about that? Maxwell Hairston in the 1st. Defensive tackle TJ Sanders snuck into a late first-round mock for Daniel Jeremiah before. Edge rusher Landon Jackson from Arkansas. And then Deion Walker, who was thought to be maybe a first-round prospect coming in. It is a high upside play for the Bills. And picking 3 defensive linemen when right now, if they were playing a game this weekend, the Bills probably already had the deepest defensive line in the NFL as far as their rotation goes. Up there would say the Texans. And maybe the Eagles still, even though the Eagles are a little bit, they had some turnover, but they're young and deep. The Bills have a deep defensive line, then drafted 3. I just love what they're doing in Buffalo.
It's interesting when you get to the 4th or 5th round, et cetera. We said this last night. We've reached the point in the draft where everybody's got something missing, right? And you can kind of go a couple of different ways with that. Some teams, I think, once you get into this point, they're chasing the guys that are good football players but are missing athletic profile, right? So I think Jack Sawyer is a great example of that. Jack Sawyer was just a good football player, but he has pretty terrible NFL caliber athleticism. And then, he was being talked about as a 2nd round player. Maybe that always felt, icky. I wouldn't want to take a guy with that kind of athletic profile that high in the draft. But in the 4th round, I'm all for that, right? He's a marginal athlete, and that's why he's in the 4th round. If he had the athleticism, we'd be talking about a 1st or a 2nd round pick. The other way you can go is the exact opposite direction, where you can say, well, what about a guy who's got all the traits, but hasn't necessarily put it together either through opportunity or just hasn't, isn't technical enough yet. Somebody in that category, I think, is Q Robinson from Alabama, who has barely played, really. But you look at his tape, and immediately you see NFL traits. You see athleticism, you see juice, you see bend, you see speed. Q Robinson to the Denver Broncos in the 4th round, I think has the potential to be one of the steals of this draft. That guy, I think, from day one, number one, insane amount of special teams experience. Like he can play every special teams phase and immediately become a core special teamer. But I think he's also a day one situational pass rusher for them because he's got an outside move with speed and bend. He can threaten the edge. He's got a devastating inside counter, and he's got a kind of long arm bull rush where he's able to get his arm like right up under the helmet of an offensive tackle and walk them back despite not being the biggest pass rusher in the world. You put those three things together, and that is an every down threat to an offensive tackle to rush the passer. I think that guy can come in and immediately be like a very useful contributor in obvious passing situations and be one of your core special teamers. Like, I love that as a 4th round pick. That is exactly what I would be chasing.
That's Q Robinson going to the Broncos in round 4. They got Savion Jones, the hybrid edge interior pass rusher from LSU in round 3. So adding some athleticism, adding some pretty good depth on that defensive line, liking what the Broncos are doing there. I want to talk the 2 receivers that the Titans got, by the way, because they had the first pick of round 4. They go Chimera DK, the speedster out of Florida via Wisconsin. So he was the first 4th round pick. At the time, you said, hey, Stanford's still on the board. Alec Iomanner still on the board there. Well, they got him later in the 4th round. Titans get both those receivers, DK as a deep threat, and then Iomanner, I think I thought we were lower on him than others. Some people liked him as high in the 2nd round. I thought he needed some polish, needed some time to develop, but you had the high-end skills, and he was the Travis Hunter kryptonite. And that's even more interesting because obviously Travis Hunter's in the division in Jacksonville. He's a receiver first, but who knows if they'll see each other again. Iomanner, he broke out with the 200-yard game against Colorado on a Friday night in 2023, and all of the highlights that show the negatives for Travis Hunter are usually Iomanner on the other side. So interesting fit in the division. I think he's an upside player because polish up the ball skills a little bit, but he moves really well. Good size, and he can win at the catch point. Just got to be more consistent with it. I think that's really nice for the 4th round.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. He's a fascinating receiver because it was both by far the worst game we saw from Travis Hunter and by far the best game we saw from Iomanner. He was phenomenal in that game, like absolutely incredible, but that was nothing like his baseline for the rest of his career. Same thing with Travis Hunter. He got wrecked in that game. Not as bad as the actual number, because not all of those yards that Iomanner racked up came against Hunter, but it was by far the worst game we saw from him as well. So it was a sort of bizarre one-off encounter for both those guys. And now like the teams are sort of recreating it potentially multiple times a season. The next name I thought, Dylan Sampson to the Cleveland Browns in the 4th round.
I have breaking news.
I know. Leave it till the end so we can get terms on it. I don't want your breaking news because we don't know what it is yet.
Go.
Dylan Sampson in the 4th round. Love that as a move for the Browns, who obviously they already drafted Quinshon Judkins in the 2nd. Very different running backs, right? We talked about Judkins being like a hammer. Dylan Sampson is 5'8", 200 pounds, and is much more sort of shifty and dynamic, and his movement skills are phenomenal. He is able to string together moves like maybe no other running back in this class. The fluidity of his movement is amazing. He can change a direction, go one move to the next without losing any speed or balance. His contact balance is nuts. He can ride all these things, keep them going. Fast, like he's got speed as well. He's got a 10.4 800-meter time on his resume. That's legit sprinting speed. I really like this guy. And, Renner loves him as well. Says he just runs the right way. Like he runs with this sort of physical intensity that you need for the NFL level. And that those two guys become the new Judkins and Henderson, right? This sort of 1-2 punch of the hammer and then the more dynamic shifty back.
Yeah, interesting for the Browns using 2 somewhat premium picks. Judkins at pick 36 early in the 2nd round, the pick they got from Jacksonville in the trade down, and then Sampson at 126 in the 4th. I think that's really beautiful value for Sampson there. So yeah, 1-2 punch at running back. That's how you're going to try to replace Nick Chubb in Cleveland. Anything else on the 4th round here? We're into the 5th officially. Who else stood out for me in the 4th? I thought Quincy Riley, back-to-back pick Jets, Malachi Moore, good solid 4th round safety. Quincy Riley, Saw the Saints room going nuts for him. He's the type of guy that gets you excited, in the fourth round, feisty, inside outside type of corner. Washington taking Jaylen Lane, I thought was nice too as a speed threat. There's a lot of fast receivers in this draft, and this is where they're coming off the board. DK earlier, Jaylen Lane now as a deep threat for Washington.
Jaylen Lane's a nice receiver. Brown. Yeah, he's a nice receiver, and he was the guy that exposed a lot of the kind of movement weaknesses from Darian Porter at the Senior Bowl. Jaylen Lane was giving him some real trouble in some of those one-on-one reps. So, yeah, I like that pick a lot. The receiving group this year, or the draft order of them, is a little weird. They're all over the map a bit, but I think Lane is definitely a guy that can contribute at this level. I like that a lot. Yeah. Okay, do you want to do your breaking news now that we know what it is, what the terms are?
Yeah, breaking news. The Seattle Seahawks are trading backup quarterback Sam Howell to the Minnesota Vikings. Seahawks and Vikings swap picks 142 and 172. So the Seahawks come up to 142. Vikings move back to 172. Prior to the draft, I think it was Kevin O'Connell said, hey, we have a very specific plan at backup quarterback for Minnesota. And it may be unveiled here with the Sam Howell trade here for Minnesota.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting to me, actually. Like, Sam Howell generally is a pretty fascinating quarterback, a guy that, a year out from the draft, the sort of way too early mock drafts, Sam Howell was being talked about as QB1, the number one overall pick, the first guy off the board, and didn't have a terrible final season. But for some reason, his stock just absolutely tanked. The offense changed. He'd lost some receivers. It was worse, but it wasn't like catastrophic. And the more people dove into his tape, the more they just soured on him as a prospect entirely. He went on a Shaduer Sanders-like slide and was being talked about as, maybe he could go in the first round, ends up being drafted in the fifth, 144 overall. And then kind of got an opportunity late in the season in his rookie year for Washington, and was good enough in those outings, or in that outing, to convince the team to give him the starting job the following year. Almost never happens for a guy drafted that low down in the draft. I was like all for it, just for the data point, right? Just for seeing a guy who was being talked about as a former first round pick, ends up going in the fifth, gets given the starting job, and it didn't go well, sadly. He didn't play particularly well. He ended up with more turnover-worthy plays that year than he had big-time throws. Basically just was way too high variance and made too many mistakes and just wasn't good enough. Lost the starting job, gets shipped off to Seattle, had one cameo appearance late in the season behind a terrible offensive line, looked atrocious. And now Sam Howell gets to be the latest beneficiary of the Kevin O'Connell quarterback rehabilitation program.
So we've talked a lot about Kwesi as this, analytically inclined GM or whatever he's, positioned as. Doesn't always do the things the way the nerds would encourage, right? They had 4 picks in this draft coming in, right? They traded up last year. He did these things that are different. The one thing that I think they've sneakily done, which I've always joked about, if I were GM, I would carry 5 quarterbacks. How many did they have? They had 4 on the roster last year for a while, right? And then 5 at one point when you included JJ McCarthy on IR, because they had Daniel Jones. They still had Nick Mullins.
Well, they had McCarthy on IR. They had Daniel Jones on the practice squad. Did they activate him by the end of the season? Under contract, I think, is probably a way of phrasing it.
We have breaking news. The real breaking news is right here. The Cleveland Browns have traded up to select Shaduer Sanders, quarterback, Colorado. There's your double up at the quarterback position. If you're a Dylan Gabriel fan, if you're a Shaduer Sanders fan, they get to go head-to-head here. The quarterback room will be crowded. That's what Andrew Berry said. It will be crowded, and it is. Dylan Gabriel, Shaduer Sanders, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Shaduer Sanders to the Cleveland Browns. Okay. I hope this is true because it's coming through on Twitter here.
What do you mean you hope it's true?
It looks real. It looks real.
All right, this is a lot to unpack, right? Because let's just take a step back for a second and look at this big picture. The Cleveland Browns, who were being talked about a week or two ago as a team that could draft Shaduer Sanders at 2 overall, have come back in the 5th round and selected him as their second quarterback. So even independent, forget where they were drafted, they have come out of this draft with Shaduer Sanders, with Dylan Gabriel, and with Mason Graham, right? Imagine telling anybody that a couple of weeks ago, this was what the Browns were going to end up doing. It would seem wild. So this is from a pure what they ended up with standpoint. That is amazing for the Cleveland Browns. Now we get, this is a very similar to the Sam Howell thing we just talked about. Shaduer Sanders has fallen from a potential number 2 overall pick to the 5th round and is the second quarterback that the Browns drafted in this draft.
Do we cut this into a separate? Are we supposed to like do a whole different breaking news video, or are we just going to roll with it?
Let's just keep doing it here, and we can maybe chop it up later and put it out.
Stereo. We'll chop it up later. Let's talk Shaduer Sanders. We're done with round. Yes, honey, am I recording? Yes, I am recording. Big news is happening. Shaduer Sanders to the Cleveland Browns. Let me start with this. First off, I was only half joking, but like a little serious on what the Browns draft strategy should have been a few weeks ago when I said, if you don't love Shaduer Sanders at the top and you want to take, at the time, we thought maybe they'll take Travis Hunter, right? If you don't want to take the QB at the top, take 2 quarterbacks and let's see. And if they don't pan out, go next year. By the way, we've just stepped into maybe that controversy as well because the Browns have 2 firsts next year and they might have options for quarterbacks. So we'll see. We might have that coming down the road. But they've drafted 2 quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel now in the 3rd, Shaduer Sanders in the 5th. I love it, man. I love it. The Browns need a quarterback, right? And they need a cheap quarterback. So why not draft 2? Let them compete. Go get it right now. Dylan Gabriel and Shaduer Sanders.
This couldn't have worked out any better for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, honestly, they have gotten a guy that was being talked about as a top 5 pick, and they've got him in the 5th round as their second quarterback, and they've gotten Dylan Gabriel as an insurance, as a roll of the dice, as a we like his tools, and maybe he's the guy that could surprise people from the mid rounds. But they've effectively, I mean, we were saying, look, how do you get out from under this Deshaun Watson nightmare position, the contract? You need to find a capable starting quarterback that doesn't cost you any money, right? So they have taken 2 shots at this. They've taken what a lot of people, you, I, Renner, I think all 3 of us kind of viewed Dylan Gabriel as the guy from the mid rounds that could potentially surprise and turn into a starting quarterback. It's low percentage, right? It's probably not a good chance that he's going to be that guy. But if you were putting your chips on one of those guys, like I would throw my free bet, right? The bonus bet. I would throw my bonus bet on Dylan Gabriel as the guy to become a surprise starter down the line. So they've taken that gamble. They've come back and they've grabbed Shaduer Sanders in the 5th round, where it's just like, if he's as good as the people that loved him think he is, this is the greatest value pick in this draft. If he isn't, it only costs us a 5th round. Who cares? And as you said, they've gotten 2 first-round picks next year, which is probably what they're targeting as the quarterback of the future. We can kick the can down the road. We can buy some time with these 2 guys this year, but next year is where we have 2 first-round draft picks, and that's when the Deshaun Watson deal becomes the easiest to get out of anyway. This is like perfect. Really, the only question is the Mason Graham versus Travis Hunter dynamic. But in terms of, we're going to take a stud player at the top of this draft, and then this is what we're going to end up with quarterbacks later on. This could not have ended up any better for Cleveland.
Well, let's go through the whole process here, because obviously the Browns passed on him many times in this draft, many times, including at pick number 2, including at pick number 5, like all the places where we thought Shaduer Sanders was probably going to go in the 1st round, including when they just said, hey, we're going to pick a quarterback here in round 3. It's going to be Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. So clearly this just got to a point where, hey, he's still on the board. We've done our work on him. We know what we're getting into. We didn't think he was worth it in rounds 1, 2, 3, or 4. But in round 5, what could go wrong? I do wonder how much the Browns did go in. Again, I was half joking a few weeks ago, but kind of serious. Like, draft 2 quarterbacks and see what happens. You're desperate at quarterback if you're the Browns. I really think they were going to do this. Draft 2 quarterbacks. I don't think this is the pairing, though. I think they Kyle McCord or Quinn Ewers. There was going to be someone else. And this is the guy. They're like, hey, we were going to bring in 2 quarterbacks anyway. Why not Shedeur?
Yeah, it was going to be like Dylan Gabriel and Curtis Rourke. And instead, it's like at some point, Shaduer Sanders in the 5th round just becomes too good a value to pass up, and they pounce on him. Now, the other element of this is going to be fascinating, because now, like, this has been an absolute kick to the nuts for Shaduer Sanders and the Sanders family and brand Sanders, right? The draft party that he's got with his own branding, legendary and, dollar squared and all this thing. Like, this could not have been any more embarrassing and humbling for Shaduer Sanders than it has been. How do they handle that, right? Is he going to handle this the right way, knuckle down, try and show the world that they were wrong and that he deserved to go in the first round? If they get that player, right, a motivated Shaduer Sanders willing to accept this and use it to grow, use it to get better, use it to become the player that he could be, again, this could be the steal of the draft. And if it isn't, right, if he handles it the wrong way, if he handles it with immaturity instead of maturity and, becomes a sort of spiteful headache and a problem, the 5th round pick is low enough that you can cut the guy and it didn't cost you much, right? Like, either of those things are fine. They've taken a long shot on a guy who has incredible potential to pay off. And by that, I don't mean that he has like the talent to be Josh Allen or anything, but he could be a starting quarterback for this team going forward, over the next few years. And if they hit that in the 5th, it's one of the best value contracts in the NFL. But if it doesn't work out, if he is too much of a headache to be worth it, they could cut him at the end of training camp and it wouldn't be it wouldn't be an anomalous outcome. Like, teams cut 5th round picks fairly regularly. So again, there's no downside to this for the Browns. It's a great roll of the dice. If it works out, the payoff is astronomical. If it doesn't work out, all it costs them is a 5th round draft pick that they cut sooner rather than later.
I got to get back to this. We have someone texted me about one of the receivers they drafted. Listen, I love this for the Browns. I need to explain it because we got a lot of new people in here. We appreciate everybody being in here. Check the mic, hit the subscribe button. We're going to give you different analysis if you're new. Different analysis than what you might get on TV. Here's the deal. The analytically inclined Cleveland Browns made a massive misstep a couple years ago for Deshaun Watson. As I've said before, the misstep affected it twice. When teams miss on quarterbacks, it usually affects you one of two ways. You either overpaid for him and you regret it, or you drafted him, or you made like a big trade up. Like, if Bryce Young didn't pan out, the Panthers would say, man, we just gave up 5 premium picks to go get Bryce Young, and that hurt the depth of our team. For the Cleveland Browns, it affected both. They gave him the worst contract in NFL history, and they gave up 3 first-round picks for him. The 2 ways that you can build your team, money and draft capital, screwed them both. So now the Browns are in this horrible situation where they're trying to figure out how to get out of it. All right. And we need to rethink what missing on draft pick quarterbacks means, right? Like, the Jets missed on Zach Wilson a couple years ago. Great. You come back, you just keep drafting quarterbacks. And if you miss, you miss. You don't have anybody if you don't take a shot. It's riskier to not take a shot because you don't have a quarterback. So the Browns are sitting here with a QB room of Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, and no other specific nice way of getting out of the Deshaun Watson mess. This is a creative way to maybe get an out from that mess, which includes an incredible buy low on Shaduer Sanders. Let me add one more piece of context here. If the reports were true that the New York Giants had Sanders as QB1 heading into the combine, I don't think there's any reason to dispute that. I think he's a talented quarterback who had first-round tape. That he was QB1, but it was the interview that turned them off. And so they just said, we don't want to deal with that, but it's still first-round tape. And I assume that's what I assume the interview process with a lot of teams probably went sour. If that's true with the Giants, it probably went sour with some other teams. But in the 5th round, to get a first-round talented quarterback, absolutely you do that. And again, we're higher on Dylan Gabriel than a lot of the other consensus as far as he's also talented with a pretty good arm, with good mobility, and with multiple years of production, over 60 starts. And by the way, the most recent quarterbacks that have had a lot of success, Brock Purdy, Bo Nix, the uber experienced 4+ year starters. So for the Browns, they might both not work out. I mean, Dylan Gabriel and Shaduer Sanders might not work out. And guess what? You got 2 first-rounders next year. And Arch Manning could be coming out. And Lenoris Sellers. And you're going to have to take a shot at another quarterback. But there were no other options for the Browns. And I love this. This is a creative way to fix an awful mess that they created for themselves in addition to all the other pretty good moves that I think they've made here. So look, I don't know if the outcome's going to be good for the Browns. I think the process is good that they landed here. Dillon Gabriel, Shaduer Sanders, get them in the room. Hope that you find your next quarterback on a rookie contract, see what happens. And if not, you can just continue to move on and get out of the mess that is Deshaun Watson.
Honestly, it's phenomenal outcome for them. Like if you were plotting this out, and there's no way they were plotting it out this way, it couldn't have ended up any better. They get, I think, what is the best gamble they could have made in terms of, right, Cam Ward is going to get taken number 1 overall. Of all the quarterbacks in this draft, who do you think is the most likely to end up as a capable starter who could get you out of this deal, right? I mean, basically, that's your who's ranked QB2 on your draft board. For most people, that was Shaduer Sanders. Yes, some people had Jackson Dart, some people had Tyler Shuck, but for most people, he was still the consensus QB2. So they've got the guy who most people think is the most likely quarterback to get them out of this trouble, and they've got him in the 5th round. They've also gotten a guy who I think is the most likely, like, mid-round, late round, the backup level quarterback to surpass those expectations and become a surprise starter, right? I think that's the way of describing Dillon Gabriel. Everyone drafted in that area is probably a backup quarterback, but if you had to pick one that would exceed those expectations and become a surprise starter down the line, it's Dillon Gabriel. They've gotten both those guys. They didn't spend more than a 3rd round pick on either of them, and they've ended up manufacturing an extra 1st rounder next year, so that if both of them don't work out, which is very possible, they can go and get the real quarterback at the top of the draft next year when it's easier to get away from Deshaun Watson. They've effectively come at the same time. They've bought themselves a year of treading water and taken 2 rolls of the dice that one of these guys actually becomes the surprise starter in the long-term future.
There's a hot button issue, man. It is interesting. I think somebody said before, like, nobody has like a lukewarm opinion on Shaduer Sanders.
Right.
There's no lukewarm opinions. Mine all kind of land lukewarm. Big shocker. I'm a fence sitting taker here. Fence sitting take. I had him as QB2. I thought he was worth a 1st. I thought you can run an offense. I think he can, cut down on the sack totals. And the biggest question, I think, of his game, we said, I wonder how much of this is just the terrible situation that was in Colorado. That's intriguing to me. I think Dillon Gabriel's not a horrible quarterback, but even if he is, I thought Kellen Mond was worth taking a 3rd round pick a couple years ago for Minnesota. He did nothing. He was awful. He was so bad. 2 head coaching staffs didn't want him. But I think we need to rethink taking shots on quarterbacks. The payout is astronomical. The payout that the 49ers have right now in Brock Purdy for the last 3 years as the cheapest starting quarterback in the league, in the ability to build with those stars around him, he was as long shot of all long shots. It's worth it to just get quarterbacks in and see. And that's going in with uncertainty. We don't know how Shaduer Sanders is going to work out. You don't know how Dillon Gabriel is going to work out. By now, you have an idea on Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. You have an idea of what you're getting. So you got to try the mystery boxes. You got to try. And here we are. Double mystery box for the Cleveland Browns. Shaduer Sanders, Dillon Gabriel. See how the competition works out. I love I love the entire process for the Browns in this entire draft. And it's not a guarantee that it's going to work out, but they needed something aggressive to get out of this mess. And this is as good as they could have done, in my opinion.
Right. No, that's the thing. Like, the chances are that both of these quarterbacks still do not work out, because that's probably the baseline expectation for a guy drafted in the 3rd round and a quarterback who was artificially inflated to high in the 1st round and probably was a sort of 2nd round guy. Like, the chances are combined, both of those guys probably have a greater chance of not working out than working out. Right. But that's why it's still good, because you've taken 2 rolls of the dice instead of 1, and you have the 1st round pick next year, which is sort of an indication, right? Like when the Eagles hedged, and remember, before Jalen Hurts worked out, right? The Eagles hedged by getting 2 1st round picks for the following year, just in case Jalen Hurts didn't get any better, and they had to go back to the quarterback well. As it turns out, Hurts then got a lot better, and they were able to use those 1st round picks elsewhere. But the Browns have done the same thing. They've hedged for 2 1st round picks next year and have the chance that one of these guys works out.
Okay, I might I might walk back all of my opinions in a second here. There is a video that's been sent to me. Have you seen the Browns war room when they drafted him?
No.
It's interesting.
What is it?
Andrew Berry looks upset. It is the most stoic. It's like a stoic golf clap from the entire room, seemingly for the camera. So I might be giving them a lot of credit for something that was forced upon them. I don't know. Because
ownership again. We got ownership's going back to the well.
I'm making it. I'm making it implication. Somebody just tweeted it at me, and it is. It is when they selected Shedeur. They're on the camera. I'm like, is this fake? Let's just make sure. Because a lot of my opinion here, Sam, is I don't have to deal with the day-to-day, right? I don't have to deal with the media stuff. I don't have to deal with answering questions. Is Shedeur going to start? Dylan Gabriel? How do you do preseason games when the two guys are out there? Who comes out first? Dylan Gabriel or Shaduer Sanders in preseason games? Right? I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
And I'm implying that maybe teams shouldn't care about that much. But they do. They do care about that. They do think that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. They do think that if you overload the quarterback room, it could be bad. And I'm over here saying, well, what if you just try it and just see? Go figure it out. It looks like the Browns are of the traditional mind. Maybe they didn't want to do this, but here they are.
I love the idea that Jimmy Haslam was like, I made such a good call last time. I'm stepping in again.
Oh man, this is it came from Warren Sharp putting this out. Okay, this is new information. New information has been brought to the table here. Either way, I still love it as a process. They need a quarterback. They need a first contract quarterback over the next 2 years, and they have an opportunity to take a look at two of them. Close up. Man, the drama does not stop here. Is that it for us?
Yep.
Is that our round 4 review and Shaduer Sanders? Let us know how we doing. What do you think is going to happen? Are the Browns making the right move here? Let us know in the comments and in the chat. All right, that's it for us. That's your round 4 review plus Shaduer Sanders review. We'll be back again later today. Check the mic, hit subscribe, do this stuff.